Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's your girl T Hardaway,
And it's Michael Bashil.
and together we are the Did It for the Hood podcast.
Indeed.
Hey, we miss y'all. So glad to be back. So glad to be back. It's another Tuesday edition, and as always, we got a wonderful guest for you. My guest today is Tiovanni Carter. So I've known T.O. Well, we know him affectionately as T.O. I've known him since, God, college years. I was there when he came out at Phi Beta Sigma as a Sigma. T.O. has done industrial engineering. He's an all-around hustler and entrepreneur. And I thought that he would be a great person to talk to because he's a black man in STEM, really. Well, he was, but he's evolved out and become an investor and done so many other things. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tio. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Um, so when I started to think about people that would be great to interview, you ran across my mind and a few others. But from having the conversation, I've realized that you have done much more than I even thought you were doing. So we're gonna start out with, can you just tell us your story?
Yeah. So West Indian kid raised in Miami. Um, oldest of five. So everything in the household was competitive, right? And engineering sort of took to me, right? So I got fascinated with the way things work. And then that was it, right? So my dad is in the Air Force, and I was around planes my whole life, and I just loved the way planes worked. I was always on the Air Force base, probably doing things I wasn't supposed to do, touching planes and all kind of craziness. But that's where I sort of had an infatuation with sort of the way things work. And then from there, it just became something that I was addicted to.
Mm, okay. So there wasn't some one person that introduced you to it, or how did you get exposed to it?
Yeah, so just being in the Air Force base all the time, like I said, playing with planes and all that good stuff, I decided, okay, hey, I want to really tap into the way things work. I've always been a numbers guy. So then I went to I took the jump to go to a magnet school in Miami, right?
Mm.
So that magnet school was engineering. There was different academies, and one of the academies was engineering. So they had engineering, medical, IB, different fields. But I stuck with engineering. I chose engineering, and from there was 4 years of learning sort of the ins and outs of general engineering, right? From drafting AutoCAD to programming to analytics, Excel, all that good stuff. And then it sort of evolved when I went to college.
Mm.
Mm,
You spoke on that competitive nature a little bit growing up. Did you find a little bit more of that competitiveness even in the magnet school?
Yeah. So engineering wasn't an easy fit, and there wasn't a lot of people who looked like me, right?
Mhm.
In engineering academy, they would have maybe went to legal affairs or
Mm.
the arts or which is not a knock to them, but it just was, I wanted to challenge myself with being an engineer. And like I said, when I got there, it wasn't a lot of people that, like I said, looked like me. But I embraced that, right? So I wanted to be able to say, hey, I was in engineering. I learned with the best and brightest minds, and it wasn't an easy path. So uh, yeah, that kind of started the journey, right? And then headed to college.
mm, okay. So why did you choose industrial engineering in particular?
So I always wanted to be aerospace, right? Aerospace engineering. Then I went to UCF. Very first day of school, sort of I'm sorry, before school started, you go to a fair, if you will, and it has all the engineering, disciplines in different rooms, right? So you just take the time to go through, 10 different engineering disciplines and choose which you like. So our first thing I did was I darted to aerospace. Went in there, sat through the 45 minutes to an hour, and they talked through, what it is to be an aerospace engineer and all that good stuff. Didn't click, didn't resonate with me. It was very dry, very not what I expected. So I worked my path down civil engineering, then mechanical, then and those got better progressively. They got better, and it seemed more exciting. But when I went into the industrial engineering room, it was buzzing, right? It was moving. They had the guest speakers there were CEOs. They had a personality. And, I didn't want to I have a personality, so I didn't want to have to stifle my personality and be sort of the, too nerdy or too geeky, if you will. And they were really making changes, right? So they were talking. It's a very broad engineering, and I say broad meaning there's multiple facets of it, right? You can be statistics, you can be process improvement, you can be analytics, you can be data model. There's different, quality. There's different facets within industrial engineering. And then there was a fun fact about, like 20% of CEOs end up come from industrial engineering backgrounds, right? Industrial engineering is essentially, it's the engineering where you are sort of presenting, right? You're continuously improving things. You're not always the favorite person when you walk into your job site, because you're the person that does change, right? So that's what my job was, to come in, look at a process, make an improvement, make changes. So you either come in and you're well loved or you're disliked. When it comes to your job as an industrial engineer. So those were the people making the decisions, the executives, if you will. So that was kind of, what's gravitated me towards them. It's the executive engineering, if you will.
You touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to like expand a little bit for the audience. What exactly is an industrial engineer?
Yeah. So industrial engineer, they improve processes, right?
Okay.
So, if, for example, if I'm trying to get a certain amount of parts out faster out the door, right? And there's something blocking it, right? There's something impeding. It's maybe it's going through a different machine that it doesn't need to go through. It's looking at a process holistically, using tool your tool belt, right? Whether that's analytics, reporting, modeling. That's a big thing, right? Modeling. When you go into a TSA airport, when you go into the airport and you're going through TSA, how do we funnel those lines? How do we do modeling to make sure that the average wait time is 2 minutes versus 12 minutes, right? Reliefs and outlets, and so big. Industrial engineering is huge when you're talking about pretty much any industry, right? When it could either be Disney, it could be Pepsi, it could be they are always looking for industrial engineers because they're always trying to make their products better, or make things faster, or improve whatever they're doing. But for me, I've always been analytics, right? So analytics, I create dashboards, I do reporting, I give advice to executives, I give them insight into how to make their process better, or what they need to do to move the needle, if you will. So I'm sort of that point person. But yeah, for the most part, analytics and modeling.
So you got to interact in a lot of high-level executive spaces. Is that what kind of shifted you towards entrepreneurship?
Yes, 100%. So I was the guy that they look to for the answer, right? So, hey, Tiovanni, we need to improve this and this and that. What's the data behind why this is happening? A lot of that is subjective. It can be, it can lend to opinion, sometimes, as opposed to actually data, right? And really, I'm data driven, and so for me to want to be data driven, and whatever I come up with, I needed to be leading, right? I needed to actually affect change. I don't want to just be reporting out just to report out and then sort of go through all the politics and red tape of let's see if we'll make the change, right? So a lot of times I'm putting together dashboards and high level presentations, passing them along, and it's almost like a check the box thing. We may not implement it due to capital restrictions or human capital, the workers, or whatever the case may be. There's a myriad of issues why something might happen or might not happen. So doing a lot of that, it kind of pivoted me to say, okay, wait, I know what's going on, right? I kind of know the answer. I know how to work through to get the answer. So I said, let me make it so that when I do something, there's an immediate effect. There's immediate change. So that's why I said, okay, I'm going to take a leap and go entrepreneur route, right? I'm going to take a leap and go investing route. And investing, it's numbers, right? It's patterns, it's technical patterns, it's analytics. I love that space. I lived in that space. I was, day trading is my thing, right? And that kind of, now when I'm making those trades, I'm using my, things out of my toolbox, critical thinking, to sort of calculate what's next. And I could see the fruit from that immediately. That's kind of where I was like, okay, well, it's time to to move away from corporate.
So how many years have you been out of corporate?
I've been out of corporate as of May. So
Okay.
yeah, so I was in industrial engineering for what, 10 years, 11 years now. This May I took the jump. Um, I found myself, everybody was working from home for the pandemic. I found myself trading and having to jump onto a meeting and missing an exit point in my trade, right? And that exit point could cost me $7,000. You know what I mean? Trading became a big thing for me. I was at the height of things, and the market has shifted pretty good. But the height of things, I was making my salary in 2 weeks' time. It was really good. And I started noticing that these meetings were getting in the way. I'd make a trade, and then I'd have to jump onto a call, and then my stop loss didn't hit, or I would have to go in and actually manually execute a trade, and I would miss it. And that was happening too often. And I realized, what did I just miss? I just missed all this for a meeting that could have been done through email, right? So that was frustrating. So that also helped me say, okay, I need to jump from corporate.
Okay, so I feel like I'm about to take us too far into the future. So let me go back a little bit because I want to talk more about that as well. But you had to get to that space before you could actually start trading, start doing those things. You had to actually build your capital and all that. So when you first got into engineering, what was it like? What was your experience?
When I first got into it, so I was fortunate to have internships through college, right? A lot of folks, they would just focus on engineering, and that was it, right? So it's a very intensive degree or area of study, right? They have classes designed to test your mental fortitude and your critical thinking. We call those weed out classes, right? So I had I've always been a numbers guy, I felt, and then you get into the calculus 2s and calculus 3s and differential equations and statics and dynamics, and you realize a lot of these things are theorems, like they're theory. It's not actual numbers. They have imaginary numbers, that they call them, and how to test out or hypothesize theories. And that was when it was a slap in my face to say, hey, this is not going to be easy. You know what I mean? So that was, I struggled with that. To be honest, I struggled with those classes. It was very frustrating because I really thought I knew numbers. I really thought I was a math guy, until they showed me that I might not be as good as a math guy as I thought. And what made it a little more difficult was I was constantly in internships, right? So through the 4 years, I had 4 different internships. That was just as important to me, learning that people side, that people skills, as much as the actual skills behind industrial engineering. I saw people who would graduate and they wouldn't have anywhere to go because they didn't tap into that sort of experiential learning and do those internships. So that was very difficult coming up. And then also, like I alluded to earlier, being the person when you come in that has to affect change. Somebody who has to, you have to make the decisions. I could walk into a manufacturing floor, know what needs to be changed, know what we need to, metrics that we can change by doing X, Y, and Z. But you got guys working on these machines for 30 years, right? 30 years on the machine, and you're some hotshot kid coming in with your degree in analytics, and you think you're going to tell me what to do to you're going to change my job and tell me this is, you don't know how it works here. So that was really difficult. I came in often like guns blazing, young hot boy, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And industrial engineering, as much as it's about knowing the answer and working towards a solution, it's about bringing the people along. Because when you affect the change, when you move something or you do something, and you create a new process, it can fail if the employees or whoever doesn't want it, they don't want to sustain it. So that was something I learned early in my career. You got to bring people along, make it feel like it's their idea, right? So that's pulling them off the floor and getting into a conference room and having a think tank, for 2 days. And okay, hey guys, I may know the answer, but let's let them arrive at the solution so they can feel invested and that, and I can harvest their ideas And so they feel invested, like as if they came up with the idea. So yeah, very,
So,
very
so
different.
when you were making those, I'm sorry, Michael, you finished that?
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question about the internships and just how did you find those internships?
Yeah, and so one rolled after another, right? So, at UCF they had the experiential learning office where you could go in, send your resume out, and in hopes of landing a job. Another big thing was NSBE, so that's the National Society of Black Engineers. That was invaluable. Without that, I don't think I would have been able to move the way I should have, right? I would have not known. You had to kind of play the corporate teddy bear, right? I had to have the low cut and like the button up and those things back in the day. Maybe now we're moving towards a little bit more where things are more inclusive and diverse. You can be the tech guy with the hair and the dreads and all that good stuff. But back then you couldn't really, right? You sort of had to fit and learn how to move and learn how to talk and speak. And NSBE was great for that, right? It was good at galvanizing Black folks, teaching them how to present themselves, what they need to focus on in their areas of discipline, and then also interviewing, right? Teaching you how to interview, how to answer, how to do those sorts of things. But yeah, that's where it sort of started. NSBE and the UCF office, and then while I was on the job, it's one of those things like once they see you have an internship, you're sought after, right? So the next internship rolled in because of the previous internship, or my relationship that I had with the industrial engineering manager at the previous role. So it becomes this guy, look at his scope of work is, the things he's done. I can believe in him. I trust him to take on this new assignment, this new project. So that's kind of how all those rolled in.
Is it still kind of the same idea today, I guess you could say, as far as like getting internships and things for engineering students?
Yeah, I would 100%. Even now in my career, right? I'm removed from corporate, but I still have, the likes of Google, Raytheon, Meta, come reaching out and wanting to set up interviews. And I'm like, that would be cool. That would be good to work, but I take a step back and hopefully give that opportunity to somebody else, because I've sort of lived the engineering, and I love it to this day. But I think right now I'm just more focused on investing. The tools that I learned from industrial engineering, they transfer well to investing, the stock market and also my businesses.
So, because I'm always interested in like the young dreamers. A lot of times when they have a dream, they don't think that you can have a real career and still chase your dream. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, that's the new thing, right? The new thing is everybody wants it quick. They want it easy. They want to dream and don't think they can do two things at once. And that's ridiculously anti-success, right? You got to be able to lose sleep. You got to be able to, I put in the work. I know you touched on capital, like getting money to invest, right? So I did 10 years of working, right? I worked right when I graduated up and through this May, and that was 10 years of maxing out my brokerage accounts, maxing out my 401k, my Roth, having different avenues. It didn't come overnight, and then it's not just you get your hands on some money and try it out. I had to listen. I remember I was working for McKesson. It's a pharmaceutical distribution company, and I was fortunate enough to have talks and calls with my financial advisor every day. I had things carved out where we could talk for 30 minutes and we talk, and he would teach me. He taught me sort of, market conditions and how to trade and what you should do with this, and, never just throw money under the bed or put more into an account than you need, right? You always want to stay capital, you want to stay liquid. He sort of taught me that, and it really stuck with me because it's like, I understand what other folks are doing, and when I say other folks, folks that don't look like us. Now I'm getting I'm understanding what they did to try to keep money, right? So they have money and then they keep money, and then it's more of like a wealth begets wealth thing, you know what I mean? And that when I learned that, it was like, okay, well now, I have the keys. Let's start
Let's drive the car.
Yeah, let's drive the car. Let's open the doors. So, but yeah, I would say just don't rush it. Don't rush it, and get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable with doing two things at once. Get uncomfortable working that 9 to 5, stomaching that boss, knowing that you're putting it up to do, your true ambition. Don't always, unless you feel so convicted, don't cut your legs from underneath you. Don't quit the job. You know what I mean? Until you're uncomfortable, until you've had 3-hour days, 4-hour days of sleep, and now you really realize, like I did when I realized that meeting was taking over from what I really wanted to do. Until you get to that point, get uncomfortable, have those two jobs, keep the corporate job, keep the 9 to 5, and then grind from 6 to 1 in the morning on your dream, double shift.
Absolutely. So while you're pursuing your investing, while you pursued your industrial engineering, I know everything wasn't perfect all the times. So what were some of the greatest obstacles that you encountered over your process?
Greatest up personally, or
Personal's fine if you feel like sharing.
Okay. So yeah, I was Phi Beta Sigma, so I was not short of going to parties, right? I didn't want to be the geek behind, the desk, right? So I wanted to still party. That was, and trying to balance that. That was, in hindsight, it's like, you could have done a little less partying, you know what I mean? But I wouldn't change it. But that partying sort of got me into trouble. I've been on the wrong side of the law, and I was flagrant. I had a hot temper, you know what I mean? And that didn't help sort of the image of me, right? But I just, I had conviction in knowing that I wanted to be an engineer. And that was, that's personal, on the personal side. But as far as actually being an engineer, it was those weed out classes. Those weed out classes, they really can make you feel like you're not going to make it, that you're not going to actually get to the finish line, and they're designed to do that. They're designed to sort of have you be like, okay, quit. I had a lot of friends who were in, in majors engineering, and then they pivoted. They said, okay, I couldn't get through calculus 2. I couldn't get through those weed out classes. So I switched to law or medicine or whatever the case may be. So it's really, I would say, just don't get discouraged, because that was big for me. It took me, I went through a calculus 2 3 times. I failed it. And calculus 2 was one of those gateway classes that if you didn't take that course, you couldn't take the other courses that you needed to, right? So every time I would fail that class, that would push my graduation back. And I would lie to myself and say, well, I'm doing internships. That was my excuse I gave myself. I'm doing internships. So, it's okay. You know what I mean? I'm getting both. I'm failing, but I'm also getting the experience that so that was encouraging, almost made me almost quit altogether.
How did you maintain your temper? And what did you do to maintain your temper? And also, like, with everything that happened with the law, like, how did you not get discouraged by all of those things that did come up for you?
Yeah, I feel like everybody was counting on me. So I'm the oldest of 5. And I was sort of my mom would always say, hey, you're always going to be fine. You always, you have a drive. And like, I had this persona of having a drive outside of my internal drive, like my internal motor, that always wanted to just get after it. So I didn't want to let myself down. That was really it, right? I didn't want to let myself down. And I said, okay, something's got to change. What do I got to do? And then I switched up friends a little bit. And when I say switched up, I didn't abandon friends. I immersed myself in more like-minded folks, right? So I found, the engineering center, right? Like engineering 3 and 2 at UCF. People, I would sit down and just start studying with folks. And then those became to this day are some of my closest friends. You know what I mean? And if I didn't have them, that things could have went different. I had mentors as well. There was a time where I had, 2-3 mentors. If I didn't go to their houses and learn from them, I wouldn't have made it. So I would say, get a mentorship, immerse yourself around like-minded people, because they just say that and you don't think that's a real thing, but it is. It really, it keeps you grounded and focused.
Can you speak to how like-minded people don't always look like you? Because that's an important thing too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like-minded people, they don't. They most of the time will look different. Especially in engineering. Engineering is a sort of, you have different folks. It's not just white. It's not just black. You have Asians, you have Indians, you have Latino, and sitting at a table and seeing that they're all, even with all of our differences, language barriers, cultures, upbringing, the way we study, even knowing that, okay, these folks are really understanding that there's a problem that we need to solve, right? So looking at this calculus 2, and I always go back to calculus 2 because it was a sore spot for me. But there's so many ways to solve a problem, right? 2 plus 2 is 4, 1 plus 3 is 4, 0 plus 4 is 4. So the Indian over here, he'll say 0 plus 4 is 4. I say 2 plus 2 is 4. He says 1.1 plus 3. Another guy may say 1.5 plus 2.5 is 4, and it's just, it all ends up being 4. It always, we get to the answer, but there's just different ways to do it. So actually being around and learning his viewpoint on how he got to that answer, how he got to the answer, how I got to the answer. Oh, I skipped these steps. Oh no, it's mental. You know what I mean? It's very eye-opening. And I think that's engineering is designed that way, to like change the way you think and then to solve things critically.
Absolutely. So I know you've carried those critical thinking skills over into your new industry. So can you tell us about what you're doing now, since you're no longer an engineer?
Yeah, so right now I do trading, and I'm in acquisitions. The executive side of me and solutioning and process improvement, some of the things I took from industrial engineering, that's the stuff that resonates with me, and that's the stuff that like drives me day to day. Like right now, like I'm addicted to acquisitions now. Like I want to buy. I constantly want to buy things, right? I want to do cost benefit analysis, risk analysis, projections. Do all those things I learned and see what's viable, what's financially viable, what's what has a great ROI, and that sort of drives me. Right now, I just I have 3 franchises, right? 3 edible arrangements. I'm in the middle of acquiring a 4th, and then I plan to have a 5th by the end of this year. And also just like pivoting, right? I want to go in and buy websites. I want to go in and I really, they say buy income, and that's really the truth. We're moving towards a space, a place where kids on YouTube making 75 grand a month, 80 grand a month, and they are there, and that's really, a lot of kids are seeing that and thinking they can do it, but there's other ways to do that, right? Other folks have been doing that for years, buying income, serial entrepreneur, buying and selling. No different than buying a house and selling it, 5 years down the road, if the market's favorable to you. So yeah.
So what is the biggest change that you've seen happen in your life since you shifted into more entrepreneurship?
I guess I don't look at things as linear, right? I don't look at things as, okay, work for a year, $120,000, work for a year, $140,000. I look at things, I'm able to, now I look at it like, I have to look at things with an ROI. I got to look at, say, okay,
Return on investment, y'all.
return on investment, right? So I got to look at things and say, okay, hey, this person wants to sell this for $440, okay, $440,000, right? Or assess the value they place on it, and then saying, no, let me go and let me see your gross sales, your cost of goods. Let me see sort of that net income and say, okay, is 3x? Is it where am I at? And what am I willing to offer for it? You may think it's 440 because that's your baby. I come back and say, no, this is based off this is 360. And hey, this might be a cash deal, so now it's 320. So you got to pull on those things. But that's the thrill for me. That's the hustle, right? Buying income. And what did he say? I do. I work so I don't have to. I pay you so I don't have to work. That's the hustle. Really, that's kind of what. When I see him talking about that, it's funny because that's where I'm at right now. I want to have more time. I'm trading my capital for time, right? I'm trading my time for for capital and acquisitions, right? I don't want to be tied to a 9 to 5. I want to be able to, trade from 9 to 11 in the morning, check on my businesses from 11 to 1, and hit the golf course at 2. You know what I mean? Tea time at 2:30, or take the wife somewhere, or flirt her up a little bit, flirt and all that good stuff. So, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I know you just spoke on it just a little bit, but I definitely want to know, like, outside of trading, outside of just your business and your career, who are you ultimately? Like, what do you like to do?
I really want to get to a space where what I like to do, I'm not 100% doing right now. When I say that, I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but I want to, help people, right? I want to affect people, you know what I mean? And finding the time to do that is what I need to, I guess, balance, if you will. I want to help the kids out, you know what I mean? I want to, you know what I mean? I did a little bit of it while I was I would coach basketball teams and all that good stuff. But I want to get back to that. And finding those organizations that can get me to do that is where I'm at right now. But that's really what I want to do. Just date the wife, flirt, travel. I'm heavy on traveling. I'm always, traveling. And that's kind of how I want to live the rest of my days, and helping people, right? Yeah.
So where's the last place you traveled?
Last place I traveled was Medellin. I was in Colombia. I've been there a few times. Probably my last time going. I've been there too many times. So, but yeah, that's the last place I went. Medellin.
Very dope. Very dope. Any reason? I was gonna say, any reason why you keep going back to Medellin?
No, one was a bachelor party. Another time I was with one of my best friends, and his dad's an ambassador out there, and so he was linking up with him for they hadn't seen him in a while. So yeah, I mean, really just bachelor parties, vacation. We have this thing in March Madness every year. Me and the fellas, we pick us a country and go. But yeah, no, I've seen enough of the country, and I'm in a good space where I don't need to go back. So. Mm-hmm.
As you've grown, how has your friends changed? Because I mean, you told me how they changed when you were in school, but you've been out of school for a second now. So as you've evolved as a man over time, how has your friendships changed?
I keep my circle kind of close. I'm a somewhat extrovert in the sense of I get a little bit of energy from folks. But I'm introverted in the sense of I like to be to myself. I like to spend birthdays by myself. I'll do a birthday trip, a solo birthday trip by myself, not even with my wife, to Budapest, and I'll just collect myself, you know what I mean? And so as much as, to answer your question, as far as friends are concerned, I don't really switch up my friends. I still got, and this is unreal, but I'm in a group chat with my friends from high school. You know what I mean? It's like 10 of us. We're very close. My business partner, he's upstairs in the room right now, and he's my friend for 2020 years now. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, my friends haven't changed that much. I've given my time to different sets of friends, right? So, I still hang with the boys from Miami, but I'll also still make sure I make time for my engineering buddies, or the folks that are where I can just sit back and politic, right? Have a cigar and talk to like-minded entrepreneurs. And I have a set of older friends that are just a few years older than me, right? 36, 37. I look up to them. I'm the oldest, but I don't have a big brother figure to look up to. And they don't know this, but I look up to them, how they move, right? I want to sit down and have a cigar with them and see I see them having kids, I want to be able to know how are you doing? You know what I mean? How are you, what does 37 look like? What does 41 look like? You're 40 right now, my man. I'm terrified. I'm terrified and excited at the same time. It's like, I'm worried about, I need to be with those friends to sort of just level set me and keep me less anxious, if you will.
I don't know why you're anxious. You're right on par. I'm like, what are you talking about right now?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I hear that, but for me, I'm very, they say like perfection is the enemy of progress, and I agree with that. I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm a speed to action guy. Like I don't if I can do it, if I can will it, I'm going to try to do it, right? So there's not really much that's going to get in my way, if I can help it. You know, but people say that like, man, you're getting it, you're after it. But I still feel like, hey, you know, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire by 2 years from now. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be bringing in $1 million a year. You know what I mean? So, you know, what do I need to do to get that? Okay, we're not there yet. You know, so my wife is always telling me like sit back, revel in some of your accomplishments. You know what I mean? Like you got 3 businesses this year, and you're going for 5. Like, you know, as much as I'm risk analysis and then analyzing it, it's still I have to sometimes learn to take a step back. You know, to your point.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, looking backwards, what would you tell someone coming up trying to do what you did? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, don't get discouraged. I'll echo some of my sentiments around that. Don't get discouraged. Find those mentors, and don't be afraid to fail. You know, you will fail, right? And when you fail, just see the upside in it. Okay, I failed this because, but now I know how to do it the second time. You know, literally. And even if I fail it again, I learned a little bit from that last failure, right? I go back to the dreaded calculus 3. Like, okay, I got this first semester down, or this first, you know, chapters 1 through 6, but 7 through 9 is where I failed, and what caused me to fail the whole class. I learned that the second time around. But don't get discouraged, and literally align yourself with like-minded individuals. It's, you know, you talk about being a product of your environment. That is very true. If you can't pivot, right? And if you don't, because a lot of people don't have that internal drive for themselves. They may be on the fence. They may want to be an engineer, but they're not so convicted to be it. It's like a doctor, right? A doctor who's going to school. One of my buddies, a cardiologist, he's just became a cardiologist this month. Actually, got his first big check, massive check, right? Huge check. After, you know, delayed satisfaction, he made sure that he wasn't a product of his environment, but he had an internal drive, that motor, that conviction to say, hey, I want to be a physician, a cardiologist. A lot of people may not have that. They may want to be, and maybe they get pushed a little bit by whether it's parents or they get steered away because of their environment. You got to really, find your internal motor, that drive, and then align yourself with people just in case, you know, you need that extra push. Because I may want to be a cardiologist, but I may not want it as bad as the next guy, and I may need some help. So I would say just align yourself with those folks, like-minded individuals.
And what would you tell young Tio, looking back to young Tiovanni, if you was talking to him to give him advice going forward, what would you tell him?
Oh, what I would tell him? Oh my gosh. Ooh, control the temper. And you know, my temper is not a thing anymore, right? I don't. It's, you know, that was college. You know what I mean? You know, control the temper. Take your time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's keep that drive, right? Keep that drive and take your time. I wouldn't have changed anything outside of, you know, my run-ins with the law, or the way I, you know, the moments that I almost pivoted and would abandon engineering altogether because of my failures. Those moments kind of strengthened it made me where I am today. Like, it got me to where I'm at today. But I would tell myself, you know, take your time, stay away from the liquor, and yeah, I don't know, and, you know, take your time. That's really it. Take your time.
Cool.
What
And
would you say?
one last. Go ahead.
Nah, I was just gonna say, what do you feel like is your motto that you tell yourself when you're just like going through anything, or even when you're up? Like, what is your personal motto that you feel like never changes?
Yeah, you know, West Indian, so it's like there's a saying, it's called "eat little, live long," right? And that's more of like my dad would say that, right? So in my head, and what that means to me is like, you know, you live long by taking your steps, right? Taking your time. You don't gorge. You don't, you know, you kill yourself by eating too much too fast. You know what I mean? Eat little, live long is like a thing. It's like, you know, take your time, stay grounded, stay humble. Don't put too much on your plate, right? Don't overdo it. And that there's a lot more to it, but if you can just read between the lines, eat little, live long is just more so, hey, take a step, reveling accomplishments, be grateful, all glory to God. It's a lot. It's a lot of things. And then that's my motto: eat little, live long.
Until I think that's the way to end it. Mike, you got anything else? I said, you got anything? No? Well, Till, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate your time. And I know that there's some young engineer that's going to be blessed by this conversation.
Yeah.
So
stay after it. Get after it.
Absolutely. So I'm T. Hardaway.
And I'm Michael Bashil.
And we are the Did It for the Hood podcast. We'll see you all next Tuesday. Peace.